Hi, welcome to Drama Means Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the 2022 Chinese drama called Shining for One Thing, and then also the movie version from 2024, Shining for One Thing, the movie.
Since we're going to be talking about the drama series and the movie, we're going to try to do a short summary of both of them because there's quite a few differences between these two pieces of material. So the drama surrounds Lin Bei-xing, who has only really ever had eyes for her classmate Zhang Yu after he saved her from dying in a terrible fire. But when her old cell phone transports her back in time to her high school days, she's introduced to Jiang Wan-sun, and she learns that he is actually the one that saved her life. She realizes she now has been given a chance to go back and change the past and rescue Jiang Wan-sun from his own impending death. Now, the movie is actually the retelling of the story rather than a sequel or a continuation, but it's told from a different perspective, and that's the perspective of Jiang Wan-sun. So Jiang Wan-sun has had a crush on Lin Bei-xing throughout high school, and she has never given him the time of day. That is until they have the chance to spend some time together volunteering for the preparations of a big concert. We soon come to realize that Jiang Wan-sun isn't just trying to form a bond with Lin Bei-xing, but is also trying to protect her from a terrible tragedy.
Today, drama means unrequited love, drama means finding yourself, and drama means, at first, if you don't succeed, try again. So, I think we're going to talk a little bit about the drama first.
And full disclosure, I haven't seen the drama. I watched the movie, but did not go back and watch the drama after we saw the movie.
Yeah, I actually watched this drama. I binged it on the plane to Korea back in 2022. So I watched half of the drama on the plane to Korea, and then the rest of the drama on the plane back to LA.
Did you think about it during your trip? Like, were you like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get on the plane and watch that on the way back? Or were you able to kind of put it away?
My time in Korea was so hectic, I kind of put it in the back of my mind. But because I binged it, it was like the first 2 nights I was there, I was kind of like dreaming about it.
Oh yeah, for sure, drama dreams.
Yeah, especially like binging like so many episodes. And the thing was, I didn't sleep on the plane at all. I literally binged the whole first half of the show while I was on the plane, and it was mainly to combat like jet lag because I didn't want to be sleeping on the plane and then not be able to sleep.
Right, just make yourself as tired as possible so that you can sleep when it turns into nighttime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then I was definitely having some like drama dreams while I was watching it. I probably would want to, in like the best scenario, to actually like sit down and like rewatch it or like watch it on a TV so I can like really get that full effect rather than because I had it on my iPad while I was on the plane, and sometimes you just don't enjoy it as much when you're like watching it on a small screen. At least for me it's like that. But getting back to the drama, I really liked like the contrast that it had when so in the beginning of the drama, Lin Bei-xing, who has been obsessed with Zhang Yu like all her life practically, and they were in an 8-year relationship since high school, and then they were engaged. And when he breaks up with her, she's sad, but it was like this kind of like whiny sad, like, I can't believe this, like, I have to get him back kind of stuff. And then it goes into like, oh, I'm going to pull all these like weird pestery like ways to get him back and like get him to like love me. And then like it just kind of like you don't feel that deep like sense of loss because he was like, oh, I'm breaking up with you. But then there's like this nice contrast of when like she fully falls in love with Jiang Wan-sun and their relationship develops, and then like knowing that she's gonna lose him every time, or like she goes back, or just desperately trying to save him, and then in the end realizing that they're destined to not be able to like be together, and she's not able to like change the past. that sorrow is so deep and it's so emotional, and her, like, the dynamic of her emotions for and love for Jawan-sun is so different from the emotions she had for Zanyu.
Well, it feels like with Janyu, it's like it's much more of a schoolgirl crush infatuation than it is like a love. Like, you know, maybe if you asked her, she wouldn't even be able to tell you what she loves about him. She's just been in love with him for so long and infatuated with him for so long. It's just who is like the apple of her eye.
Yeah.
But not really a deep emotional connection.
Yeah.
Because that's what I got when you were describing the series. It didn't feel like she made an emotional connection with this guy. It was more like, oh, I'm into him because we had this moment together. And now that meant so much to me. And now that's the only thing that meant everything. So it kind of just built from there. But it really never harnessed a connection between the two of them.
And honestly, like, Janyu never really treated her that well. Like, especially when you kind of show their relationship in high school before they started dating. Like, he thought of her as, like, the most annoying pest. And was like, leave me alone. I have no interest in you. Get out of here. You're not good enough for me. You know, and it just and I feel like their relationship was the fact that she just never gave up and, like, just wore him down until he was like, fine, I'll date you.
She's his Steve Urkel.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, just like, I'm wearing you down. I think that was actually Steve Urkel's line.
So, yeah, so it's just, he was never that into her, you know, and she just had this, she held on to the fact that he, like, saved her life, and all of this, like, love that she had for him, you know, stemmed from the fact that he once saved her life from a fire, and that also he's, like, cool, and all the other girls like him, kind of thing. So it was never, like, a real deep, like, connection. And whereas with Jangwon-sun, like, they started out as friends. Like, she got to know him as a person, as a human being, and, like, you know, what matters to him, and they, like, connect, and, you know, they start liking the same things. It's just, like, a different type of connection.
It's interesting because it does feel like a lot of people who start relationships with, like, their high school sweetheart have that moment of, oh, this is why we fell in love, or this is the inciting incident, but then it doesn't build past then. Like, I think for a lot of people, like, it doesn't build any deeper than that. It's just, well, now we have a history, and we have this long history now. But are you constantly renewing, like, who you are as a person and who you're growing to be as a person? And are you constantly exploring each other and making sure that you're, like, you have a deep connection rather than just, oh, this one instance bonds us, and then it just kind of, that's it. That's what we got, and that's what we can always go back to.
Yeah. So when I was this girl's age in the drama, I literally fell for someone hard because he was dared to drink this nasty, like, it was a concoction that his friends had just, like, each took turns putting something nasty in it. So it was, like, I don't know what it was, like a cup of, like, Coke or soda or something with, like, chili cheese in it, and, like, just, like, mustard and ketchup, and just, like, nasty, right? And then he was dared to drink it, and he did, and I was like, wow, he's so cool and brave for drinking this nasty thing and didn't even think anything of it. He's the best ever. And I followed that with, like, I liked him so much, and I approached him, I courted him, you know, and then we did date for, like, a week, you know, and then, like, it ended terribly, but it was just like,
my second nerd reference of the podcast is going to be, you almost married Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. Like, can you imagine?
Oh my god. Let's not, like, take it to, like, marriage.
No, I'm going all the way to it. You use that inciting incident to get married to Booger from Revenge of the Nerds.
That's why I a lot of times prefer like the more mature like romances when I'm like looking for dramas and stuff. And I will watch these high school dramas and whatnot, but because I do like a good coming of age story. But it's so you start liking people for dumb reasons and you don't even know why. Like you don't, I'm like sometimes you don't even see past it and see like the what the real person is.
Well, you don't even know the real person. Your brains haven't fully formed.
Yeah.
I mean, your adolescence. I do have a hard time with high school romances. I think I much rather watch high school coming of age, or even, some sort of story where people are like pulling together to do something. But when it comes to like high school romances,
Let's just get it out there that you just don't like romances.
no, that's
in
not
general.
true. How dare you? How dare you? I'm just saying, I don't believe high school romances. I spend the entire time watching like these two are never going to talk to each other after high school. It's so important that my crush acknowledges me. You're not going to talk to this douchebag after high school. You're going to go off to separate colleges and be done. Get out of here.
Okay, I mostly agree, but there are definitely high school sweethearts that end up together. So something that I really like about the drama version of Shining for One Thing is that it had enough time for the characters to build connections with other characters other than your counterpart. So like Ling Beixing, yes, she bonded with Zhang Wansen, but then she also made two new friends that she never did in her past. She had like a whole set of new friends that are different when she went back in time, and she went and appreciated what other people that like she never even met, like even gave the time of day to, and completely like dismissed them and like overlooked them in the past. And then this time around and like being able to like go back in time, she like met people that she would have never bonded with if she didn't have the chance to go back in time. So I really appreciated that. Like one being her girl bestie, which is Gao Ge, and they relied on each other and supported each other, and I felt that was, a relationship she didn't really have in like her present day life, where like she still were friends with, the people that she doesn't actually like her rivals. And one being the girl that San Yu ends up, breaking the engagement for. I kind of miss that in the movie because I think a really important character and her boy bestie is Yang Chaoyang. And he becomes her like very important confidant. He's the only character that she was able to confide in and tell him that, she's a time traveler and she went back to try to rescue Zhang Wansen. And he's there and he's like, I'm supporting you. I believe every word you're saying and I'm going to help you. And, without any kind of like, you're stupid, you're crazy, stuff like that. And like, sometimes you just need a friend like that that's just got your back. And like, I really liked his character, and he was like very supportive to Gao Ge and, and Zhang Wansen. And it's just kind of nice that character existed. And it was a little disappointing we didn't get to see him in the movie. And what they actually did was like combine that character and Maizu's character together.
Well, that's the benefit of drama television, right? Is you're able to, you have more hours to draw out characters and side characters and different character arcs. And it sounds like the series focused much more on, she went through life the first time kind of having surface level connections with those around her, which made her be an adult who had surface level connections with those around her. And when she went back, she was able to forge relationships that had deeper emotional connections and personal connections, so that going forward now she can be a fully realized adult rather than just someone who kind of, goes to brunch with the girls that she doesn't really like. But you can do that with series television where you have the time to like spend on these characters, and your main characters don't have to be, engaging with each other and pining over each other in every scene, because you have the time. You have 12 episodes, 15 episodes, whatever it is, to kind of elongate those relationships. And it's so much harder with a feature film.
Yeah.
Like, I find myself sometimes not buying the connections in feature films anymore because they have to happen so quick. Like 20 minutes into it, they're in love, and it's like, well, it's been they've spent 2 days with each other, or whatever the dynamic is between the characters. How do you hate that person after one interaction with them? But because it's a movie, they have to. Like, you have to get the story going.
I could hate someone with just one interaction.
We know.
Anyway, this drama had 24 episodes.
That's a long time.
That's
a lot of story you're able to tell over 24 episodes versus a 2-hour movie. That's
true. Very true. So I really enjoyed the friend connections, and even like, some of the connections that she builds with like her homeroom teacher, and you mentioned before how she kind of like going back through time and meeting these like not surface friends. She was able to grow more as an adult, and I wanted to say that like her character growth, it really shows. And so in the beginning, she was actually like a really selfish person, and she never took her job seriously, didn't take her boss seriously, didn't take her like coworkers seriously, and she really like disrespected her job because her whole goal in life was to marry Zanyu. And it was about to happen, and that's like, and no one else mattered, right? And so when she goes back and towards the end of the show, after going back in time so many times, she's like, through Jungwon's son, she kind of started having ambition, right? And so when she went back into her present day and she goes to work, like, she is able to wake up on time and go to work on time. She is like creating new project ideas, to help the zoo. And she has a stronger bond with her boss and respects him as a person more, and other, people that she works with at the zoo. So it's just kind of this character growth that you really see, and it's very prominent in the drama, how much she grows as a person, and how like it no longer is that selfish, uncaring, only takes kind of character.
Well, it sounds like the story is more about maturity than it is about anything else. Like, whether or not it's about the romance between her and Jangwon's son, it's more like she needed to go through this to mature as a person, rather than, even the romance and finding someone to love and care for, that's all in good. That's great. But it really is reflecting in her own personality going forward of, oh yeah, when you care deeply about something, anything, you want to do it better. When you care more about your job, you want to do it better. And if you're only caring about surface level interactions and obsessions, it can only give you so much energy and motivation.
Yeah.
And like, when you have passion, that's what I think people a lot of times talk about passion, and they confuse passion with kind of obsession. Passion is something you feel like deep in your bones for something, and will keep you motivated forever to do a good job doing that thing. Whereas obsession, it kind of wears off.
I think we're going to talk about it a little later, but I'm going to mention it here that this is really a coming of age story for her, even though it uses the concept of like traveling back in time, and her finding herself. And comparatively to the movie, the theme of it is quite different, whereas the drama is definitely about her maturing as a person, and although like using the tool of traveling back in time and then meeting someone that is very important to her, she's able to honestly like herself better, and respect life better. And it's just like that maturity and growth is like the purpose of her going back in time, whereas the purpose in the movie is different. Last but not least, the romance on this hits hard. This drama, like, at first, in the beginning, I was like, she doesn't deserve Jang Won-sun, right? But like after their interaction and their, growing together, it's just, it hits real hard, and the chemistry is so good between the two actors. And like I would watch it again just for like their romance, and like kind of ignore, because ultimately it is a drama and there are some annoying characters in it. But for the most part, I really enjoyed their interactions.
I didn't see the drama, so I don't know the romance in the drama, but I will say the chemistry between the two actors, because this is one of the rare times. I'm trying to think of any time in like Western entertainment where you have a series and then you do a movie that kind of retells and conceptualizes, whatever you want to say, the same story, and you use the same actors. Like, it's not a remake because it's the same, actors playing it. So anyway, that's all goes to say these two actors have an amazing amount of chemistry. Like, they're effortless together. And I would imagine doing 24 episodes of a show and then doing a movie, they know their characters up and down, they know each other left and right. So it doesn't seem like it would be that difficult at that point to have that instant chemistry. But I will say, like, their connection on screen is capturing. Like, it's so easy.
I don't have a ton of dislikes. I think the main thing is I was very frustrated with Ling Beixing's character, because she was so selfish and so self-absorbed and just like bratty and irresponsible in the beginning, and it really irritated me. And one of the main things that irritated me so much was throughout her time, like, she's talking to her parents, and her mom keeps mentioning Jang Won-sun, and like, oh, he's a classmate of yours and he died that year you guys, had your high school exams or college exams or whatever. And then she was so like self-absorbed that she's like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, I understand if you don't know somebody that's in your same class, because maybe your class is so big and you only know your own, few people that you like talk to. And so maybe you don't know, someone in your class, and since you're not friends with them, you don't, not that you don't care, because if it were me and I was like, oh, heard that someone, like a classmate passed away, I'd be like, oh my God, that's so sad. Like, just like, I would feel bad at least, where she's very dismissive and she's like, yeah, whatever. And so then when she starts going back in time and she's like met him a couple times, but still like she's so preoccupied about like trying to get Zanyu to like love her and like improve her relationship with him so that in the future maybe he won't break off their engagement, that she's like so dismissive of Jang Won-sun. And I'm like, you literally had the information that he died, right? You don't have even an inkling of like, how about I try to do something to prevent him from dying? Like, that never occurs to her. So like the first few times of her traveling back in time was such a waste, because she never even like considered like helping this guy that like is a classmate. Like, yeah, you might not have known him, but like, he's a classmate of yours. Come on, like, have a heart. And so I was really frustrated with her, and her character's known to not be smart, but I was so mad that she was so stupid. it drove me crazy. So that part I really like I had a hard time getting into it first because I was so frustrated with her character. But of course, it is a coming of age, so she had to start from somewhere and like evolve and have that character arc. And her character arc is really strong. And then you end up really liking her towards the end and just like really rooting for her and John Won-sun together. And so it's just, it's a pass, but just watching it from the beginning was so frustrating.
It's a fine line though, because you do need her to arc in a big way to get that full satisfying story. And so a lot of times main characters have to start out a little unlikable, which is hard because you also want your characters to be likable enough that people continue to watch. Like, you don't want people turning off the television because they find her, like, despicable. So it is a very fine line to walk. And it sounds like they may have just... A lot of times those things are just, like, one or two tweaks. And you can kind of, like, if she would have heard about her classmate that died but didn't know his name, if the mom hadn't have said his name, so that she went back in time and it's like, okay, one of my classmates died, but I don't even know the guy's name. How would I even figure that out? Like, that would be so far afield, like a small tweak like that. Then when she realizes, oh wait, you're the one who's going to die. Now I care. Like, now that I've put a name to a face and a tragedy, now I can, put these things together and care. It's just those small incremental tweaks that fix those problems. But at the same time, you're like, it's a judgment call a lot of times.
Yeah. And I think that part took too long where like she realizes like, oh, she's there to save him. She's there to change the past. She's there. Like, the reason behind her going and traveling back in time is, at least in her mind, it took way too long for her to realize that that's one of her goals, is to prevent him from dying. And that really upset me. And so, like, the pacing of that part was really frustrating.
But I have noticed that is kind of par for the course for a lot of these shows, that they spend so much time setting the stage. Like, in American television, if you haven't told your kind of premise up and off the ground and the character's main thrust for the whole series by the end of the first episode, no one is watching the second episode. And I notice a lot of time in these like Chinese dramas, Korean dramas, it'll take 4 or 5 episodes for it to kind of get the show running. And a lot of times I'm waiting. I'm like, when is this show going to become the show? Like, when is it going to become the show where she travels back in time to do the thing? If still in episode 3, she's just in love with her boyfriend and wants to fix her relationship. I'm like, oh my God, get to it. And so I think, honestly, a lot of these shows would just do with having 5 less episodes. I would say that about almost everything we've watched in the last year. Like, cut 5 episodes out of it and the show is fantastic. But almost all of them, like, oh, there's a stretch. Oh, that took a long time to develop. And it kind of just drives me a little batty.
Yeah. But, yeah, another thing is, I do have to say it is a little predictable. Like, it gets to a point where you're like, oh, yeah, I know this is going to happen, and I know that's going to happen, and then and you're just kind of sitting there expecting for it to happen, and then it does, and it just proves you right. And sometimes I like being right, I like being right a lot, but for the most part, sometimes when it's too predictable, then it, like, takes me a little out of it.
You're just waiting for the thing you know is going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's not actually that. It doesn't make you feel like a smart viewer. It just makes you feel bored.
Yeah. So that's just a few of the things that I didn't like about the drama, but for the most part, I really liked it.
So we've already talked a little bit about the plot differences or the perspective differences in the summary between the movie and the series, but I think the biggest difference is probably the thematics, because it really does feel like the theme of the movie is all about processing grief and overcoming loss as opposed to a coming-of-age story. It feels like both of the characters have neither of them are real selfish or childish. Like, they both have kind of very firm grasps on what they want and what they want to accomplish, and their, kind of school crush on each other. But it really is about losing someone, doing whatever you can to get them back or to protect them, and then realizing, kind of like the stages of grief, that you kind of have to accept that this loss is a loss, and it isn't just going to end happily ever after, and you're going to have to kind of enter back into life having appreciated what that person gave to you, but knowing that it had to come to an end. And I think that, for me, the movie held the thematics in front of itself really well, and what I mean by that is they didn't really lose sight, and they didn't try to make a different movie halfway through. They always knew where they were going with the movie. And I don't envy them with making a movie. I don't know how I would set about doing it, where you take a series that you've done, and now you're like, okay, we're going to retell this story in a 2 hour, 5-minute feature film, but we're going to tell it differently to not piss off the fans that already like it, but also introduce a new audience to it, but also show a new perspective, so that it's just not you showing up to the theater to watch the same thing you spent 24 hours watching already. Like, it's really tricky. And I think the smartest move they did was refocus the thematics, because I think that, as the guideline, helps you not make the same show as you made already.
I really liked the fact that it was Jang Won-sun's perspective, and like when you're watching it, it's through it's his story, because we've already, I mean, although I like the introduction, like towards the end when it's like you see her story, but like we kind of saw that process in the drama of her going back over and over and over again to try to change things to save Jang Won-sun. So even though they showed it through like almost like a montage / voiceover, we were able to see it in the movie, but it was like a short bit, and I really liked the fact that we followed Jang Won-sun's character and like how he is trying to protect her. And so that's where I agree, changing that perspective was such a good move on the movie.
And coming into it not having seen the series, not understanding that it was kind of her story, and finding that out after I watched the movie, I was like, well, obviously that's such a great way to kind of reverse the polarities on their relationship and, tell the story in a fresh new way. Because I think if they would have just stuck to her point of view and just tweaked things, I think it would have been very bland. I don't think they would have come up with new and fresh ideas and takes on it. I think they would have kind of painted by the numbers and, combine characters, because now we're shooting a movie versus a TV show, and, we'll do this, and we'll make this thing shorter, and we'll condense different things. But I think the filmmakers kind of had to just re-examine the entire story to go, oh yeah, what would the story be like, if the shoe was on the other foot, if he was the one who, wanted to save his friend who he lost, and it's all from his perspective. And then I think kind of double backing, her, oh wait, no, she's also coming to this world and trying to save her friend, and now we see it from both sides. Partly it was like a wink to the people who watched the series to go, no, we didn't forget that she was the time travel and the phone and all the stuff that was important to you if you watched the show. So it's a very interesting blend. I think they did a good job of staying true to what the fans probably liked about the series, but also giving us something new.
That's definitely, like, I was a little worried that it was going to be like a recap movie, which, since we're also anime watchers, they have those recap movies all the time where like you just go and you're like watching a condensed version of the whole series, and it's just like maybe with one added scene, and then you're like, because we went to the theater to watch Shining for one thing, and it was really enjoyable, but I was also like, are we just walking into a condensed version of the drama? And then I was like, and Ryan would have been fine because he hadn't watched the drama, but I had watched the drama, so it was like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm walking into. And I didn't read too much into, like the synopsis and like, comments and other people's reviews before I went in and watched the movie. I just wanted to be surprised and enjoy the movie as it is without knowing much, about it. But I wasn't sure, and I was like very pleasantly surprised that it was almost watching a new movie, and then it's like you can stand alone watching the movie without having to watch the series, which is like very nice because like I was also not sure if like Ryan was supposed to watch the series first and then go and watch the movie, but it was like 24 episodes, and I was like, I had just found out that it was actually in theaters in LA where we could just go and watch it. And it was like in theaters for like the next 3 days, and then it was gone. And so I'm like, we have to go now to go see this movie. So we just kind of went, and I'm glad that it has a standalone movie feeling.
Well, absolutely. It definitely is a standalone element. I don't think you would need to watch the series ever. And I probably won't go back and watch the series ever, like now that I know the story, and especially now that we've talked about it. If there was never a series, I think this movie holds itself up by, all on its own.
Yeah.
Now, the other difference you mentioned was kind of the combination of characters. I don't know the characters from the drama as well, but it felt like they kind of morphed the friends, which you kind of have to do. You can't service 15 characters in a 2.5 hour movie. You got to keep it on your leads. So it felt like that was kind of a necessity to do for the feature film, just to keep it moving.
Yeah. What I mentioned before was Yang Chao-yang from the dramas. His character and Maizu's character got combined into one, which I have this like, I like it but I don't like it feeling, where because I really liked Yang Chao-yang's character because he was, the most important confidant to Ling Beixing. But the thing is, because the movie, the perspective has changed, so we're watching Zhang Wansen's character, and so his friend, his most important confidant, is the one that we're watching and we're focusing on. So it makes sense that it's Maizi. So in the drama, Yang Chaoyang is the character that Ling Beixing can tell that she's a time traveler. So in the movie, Maizi is the one that Zhang Wansen can like confide in and tell him he's time traveling and trying to save Ling Beixing, and Maizu's like, okay, I will help you and I will do all the things that you need me to do to help you save Ling Beixing.
Right, I mean, it really is a function of the POV. Like, Ling Beixing doesn't really have POV powers in the movie. Like, we don't see scenes with her really that I can remember, at least in the first half of the movie, that are her by herself from her perspective. Like, if she's in a scene, it's because he's in the scene. So she doesn't have her own point of view in the film until she kind of gets to tell her story of, actually, here's what's been going on with me. I've been going back to these parallel universes and trying to save him over and over and over again because I miss my friend. And so she doesn't really need a confidant in the movie as much as she did in the series, because we're not cutting to those scenes by herself and her confidant going, here's what I'm worried about, because we're worried about what he's going through and how he's trying to, approach the girl he likes. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, he's trying to save the girl he likes. Oh, wait, no, she's trying to save him. Like, it's all these different, layers, but it really is told from his point of view. So, thinking about her, giving her, like, characters that are kind of swarming around her that have thoughts and opinions that are more than a background is pretty unnecessary for the story that they decided to tell.
Yeah, I agree. So I see how that works, even though I very much cherish the character of Yang Chaoyang. So that's, but those are just a little, like, the differences, but I totally understand why. And, like, I think it's a good decision.
Well, pretty necessary, really.
Yeah. So in the movie version, the romance hits even harder.
You really thought in the movie, even though they have less time to be together, you really felt the emotions just as much as you did from the series?
Honestly, it's a little different because their interaction, it really feels like a puppy dog romance, because in the beginning, you don't really know. They don't show the time traveling aspect until like a lot later, and you're just literally following Jungwon's son and him just like having a crush on this girl since high school for a really long time, and then finally being able to have some time with her, and then their little cute interactions and his little shyness and like a little bit awkwardness, and and her like what you think she's like oblivious to it all, and you're just it's like it has that very like first love feel, and it does it so well. I think everyone can relate to those first feelings that they have for like from crush to friend to you can feel that the other person has feelings for you too, and then to the point where like they're going to confess. And I think and the drama is very successful in the romance, but it gets very clouded by like, I need to save Jungwon's son, all this other characters that I have to interact with. It's stretched out longer, so it doesn't feel as potent. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so when the movie, it's like you only have that short little bit of time together, but you have to jam-pack all those emotions in. It just feels really strong.
Well, I think that the progression of the romance was done very well in the movie. It didn't take too long. It didn't feel too quick. It felt like every scene was building on the last as far as the interactions. It didn't play the same note over and over again. I think sometimes these dramas run into the trouble of every scene for a while plays the same kind of romantic note, and then you're like, please move on to the next note, and then they finally do, but again, they don't have the time to kind of dwell on these things. So I thought they did a great job of making you feel it, and you feel that there's my crush, I'd want to say hello, but I can't, and then she kind of almost falls in his lap when it comes to the volunteer thing, and then he goes and seeks her out at the bookstore, it's like there's all these layers of him courting her, even though she doesn't feel like she's really reciprocating. She is. Like, you can tell through her different interactions, like, to spite herself, she is reciprocating. And I thought that, it just built on the progression in every scene, worked in a way that made you feel it again and again, but not just the same thing.
Yeah. And then it became when it's the scene and he's sitting in the cab with the hopes of confessing and like introducing himself to her as who he really is and not just Apollo. And then listening to the letter or that story being read that's written by her, and just his breakdown in that cab and realizing that their goal is the same. And then just already knowing that she's been so in love with him as much as he's in love with her. It's just, man, that hit so hard, And he is like breaking down in the cab. So yes, to me, the romance hits really hard and a little differently, because again, it's like we get her emotions and her feelings, but because in the drama, her emotions were so strong that we get to feel his emotions, that, it's just all that love pouring out of them. In both drama and movie, the romance hits a little differently, but also like really, really strong.
So I think moving into stuff we didn't love about the movie, or at least I didn't love about the movie, is I did think the reveal of him time traveling in order to save his friend from this tragedy, from getting, burned at this concert, came very, very late. And normally stuff like that is pretty, I wouldn't say unforgivable, but it's hard to overcome when you've asked me to watch a movie and what I've watched for maybe 40, 45 minutes is a high school romance between two people, and then you suddenly go, oh, by the way, he's time traveling. It's like, whoa, 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 wait, you haven't given me any hint so far that's the kind of movie I'm watching. And I didn't go in knowing that there was a time travel element to it. So it was like, what? I mean, again, in this movie, I did like it overall, so it didn't ruin the movie. But I was like, oh, man, that's coming really late.
I also thought it came really late because I was sitting in the theater and I was like watching it. I'm like, is this like fan service movie where we just get a movie where they end up together? There's not going to be any time travel aspect to it, and this is what we wanted as fans, because to be honest, the drama ended on a note where it was very open ended in how the drama, finished. And so when I watched the movie, I'm like, this could possibly be like, the director or the production team, just like, this is what the fans get to thank them for liking the drama so much. And this is like just a romance between the two characters, So I actually wasn't sure, because I didn't look too far into it. So I wasn't sure if there was going to be a time traveling aspect to it. And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, is it gonna happen? Is it not gonna happen? And then when it does, I was like, oh wow, they waited really a long time to give you that.
The only thing that saved it was they were able to keep their tone fairly consistent. Like, it didn't turn into a sci-fi movie. It did stay fairly grounded with kind of this asterisk that was, oh, and by the way, he's doing this for the second time. But it's ballsy. I mean, I don't think I would have the guts to write a script where I turn that card on page 40.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes I was like, I kind of like that little reveal a little later. I don't know if it was maybe too late, but I liked the reveal of it.
Yeah, I would have almost liked it better if they would have given some kind of hints earlier on, and maybe they were trying, but it was just so subtle.
Yeah, like if there were some like Easter eggs that we could have the audience could see, but then the characters couldn't see. That I think that would have been a little bit better. And then when they did turn it to, hey, he's actually time traveling, then you're like, oh, I saw that. I saw this hint. And it'll kind of make the audience feel a little like, oh, I'm really smart for noticing these things. I think that would have been a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do. And I think they may have, I would have to go back and watch the movie again, but I think they may have tried a little bit to kind of like hint at this might be the second time this has happened, because when he goes to get the tickets and it's a little different than it was last time, he is a little surprised. Like, he walks up to the window and he's like, can I get 2 tickets? You're like, oh no, they're both sold. And he's kind of like, what do you mean? And in that moment, you're just like, oh, the tickets are sold, and he's surprised. And then you realize upon like second viewing or, thinking back, is that, oh, last time they did this, they each got to buy 1. And so the fact that, but it's so subtle, and in the moment, it doesn't strike odd at all. Yeah. So there's nothing inconsistent to kind of grab onto to go, oh, am I watching something different than I think I'm watching? And again, maybe that stuff comes across as like tacky or poorly executed, and then it just sucks. And then you just live with this reveal being a little late, and that's fine.
I mean, we still thoroughly enjoyed it, so it didn't hinder. At least for me, it didn't hinder, like...
No, it did take me a good 5 or 10 minutes sitting in the theater to go, wait, what? There is what? Okay. Now? Like, it was a little bit like... It was a little off-putting at first. And I do think the strengths of the movie eventually kind of overshadow that oddity. Like, the characters are very well drawn, the thematics are very strong, it's well acted, their chemistry is great, so you forgive them for a lot. But it did feel pretty...
For you, it was like pretty jarring, right? For the time travel like being so late. But for me, like the thing that I probably out of everything I disliked the most is the fact that Maizi was the one that had to tell Ling Beijing that like Zhang Wansun is like a time traveler and he went back in time and did all this stuff to protect her and to help her or to try to rescue her from her impending death, basically. And then she finds out that they've been doing the same thing, you know. And I wish that there was something or some way that she earned that moment for herself and she found out on her own, rather than Maizi just randomly calling her and be like, hey, by the way, it's this. And then it's like, oh, well, it's kind of a cheap way out. The thing is, like, in all honesty, like, they both find out by being told.
Yeah.
But his was such an emotional way that I welcomed that. I welcomed that he was basically told by her that she truly was in love with him. I liked that part. But for her, I felt like she needed to earn it. We needed to see that moment where she finds out on her own and not just be told. Like, everything's, like, given to her on a silver platter.
I mean, I kind of wish they both had to earn it, because I've really noticed recently in pilots and in movies how little the main character has to do in order to get the thing that is crucial for the story to happen. Like, sometimes characters need to be told things. Like, sometimes you just need to be told. But when it's the thing the entire story is resting upon, I want my characters to earn that thing. And I have noticed in so many things I've watched lately that the main characters are just handed the key to the entire story. And they go, oh, thank you. It's like, come on. Like, is there no way they couldn't have even half earned it? Like, if she would have found something weird or had an inkling of something, and then she went to the motorcycle shop and interrogated Maizi and said, what's weird here? Something's weird and you're not telling me that there's something weird. And he finally has to go, okay, I'll tell you. At least she drove the bus, you know? And I think even with him, like, I didn't love that the confessions happened kind of randomly. Like, he just happened to be listening to the right station on the radio in the cab at the exact time. Like, he's listened to the radio none in the whole show, and the one time the radio was on, she gets to spill all the exposition of what she's been doing. Like, how much better would it be if he was searching for something in bad pitch, but he finds her diary, or he finds this recording, but he had to went searching for it rather than just it handed to him.
Or he wanted to see, because they both wrote a thing. They both wrote like a letter for the bookkeeper or the bookstore owners, like little event, right? So what if he was like, I want to know what she wrote. I want to, you know, and he like maybe pretends to help the bookstore owner, you know, like gather or whatever this thing, right? And then finds what she wrote. You know?
It does feel like they could have both put them in the driver's seat of their own story for that moment. Her, it's weird because the story is so much of his perspective. And I'm trying to think of what other scene, but like the scene between her and Maizi is maybe one of the only scenes where we're with her while she's talking to another character, and it's a strictly her POV scene. So like, I want her to earn it, but like she almost needs to earn it less because she's not the focal point of the story. She's kind of a side character. Not really. She's one of the main characters, but you know what I mean? Like, it's his perspective. But I do want them both to find that thing out through their own merits rather than kind of having something just be gift wrapped. And even if you did one of those, if she had to earn it, then her confession is a subsequent fallout to her learning that. And now it weirdly makes it earned by proxy.
Yeah. Well,
At least.
that's the thing. Like, literally, Maizu earned the reveal instead of her earning the reveal, because Maizu was like, "Hey, I noticed you've been real different. You're my best friend. My best friend can scuba dive, and you can't even swim? And you don't know how to scuba dive? What are you talking about?" He earned that. He learned, he like guessed it. He learned, he put two and two together, and he learned the character as a time traveler, right? You're not really my friend. Why did we give that moment to him?
Well, in order for him to confess, again, that's what I'm talking about. He had to interrogate for that moment. But yet, when it came to her, she didn't have to interrogate for that moment. She kind of gets it spelled out.
Yeah.
And so it's just sometimes you just put the emphasis in the wrong place, and you've written yourself into this corner where you need these things to happen. And going back and trying to engineer the driving force just reworks too much that's already working, and so you don't do it. And I get it. It drives me a little nuts, though. Especially because how much I've seen it lately. I remember watching that Shadow and Bone show on Netflix, and I'm like, the whole time, I'm going to fall in love with the Dark Prince guy. And then someone's like, hey, by the way, he's the bad guy. It's like, oh, so she had to do nothing to figure out he's the bad guy? Like, she literally just like danced around and went to balls. And it's like, look at me, I'm special. It's like, by the way, you're sleeping with the bad guy. And like, come on. Like, you couldn't have figured out any way for her to earn that. And I can name 1,000 shows recently that just feels like, boy, have your main characters make decisions and aid in the pushing forward of their own story. Please.
So, something that really kind of took me out of the movie was the beginning. And I don't know what I was expecting, because I watched the drama, and then it starts out with like them as astronauts in space or on the moon. It like really took me out of it for a while, and it kind of like, they had to be like in reality for me to like jump back in. And also with like the weird CG that it had of them, where like it's just like they're astronauts, but then they like, I feel like they superimpose their faces onto whatever astronaut, CG or figure or whatever they had. And literally there's this Hong Kong movie called Golden Chicken, and like it's about sex workers, and the movie poster is of a sex doll, and the face.
I remember this poster.
Yeah. The astronaut looking thing reminded me of a sex doll. So it really, really took me out of it for a while.
I was not thinking about Golden Chicken.
Well, yes, but it reminded me of that sex doll. Anyway, so...
I mean, it did feel like a depart. I get it, like the whole like moon thing, and that was a big, part of the iconography and, way to visualize the thematics of it, but it does feel a little odd.
Yeah. Part of me is like, I feel like they just put CG in for the sake of having CG in it. Like, was it necessary to have any kind of CG? I really don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to start with the visual, probably.
Yeah.
So, my last dislike isn't really a dislike as much as it is a discussion. Because I want to talk about the ending. Mm-hmm. Because, spoiler, the end of the movie, after they've realized they cannot be together.
Like this whole show hasn't been a spoiler.
No, but this is the spoiler of all the spoilers. Like, this is the last frame of the movie. They've realized they can't be together as much as they'd want to. They have to move on from each other, and this is the way that they're going to process their grief, and they've had this great time. All the stuff we've talked about. And she's walking through the snow, and someone comes up behind her and holds an umbrella over her head, and she turns and she sees, and it's him.
And by the way, that's exactly how the drama ended. that was the last scene of the drama where she is walking across the street in the middle of, the start of a snow, and an umbrella goes over her head, and she turns around, and all you see is her turn around. You don't see him, and you don't see like who it is holding the umbrella over her head. So in the movie, they decide to end it the same way, but then actually show you that it's his face, it's him holding the umbrella over her head.
So, here's where my dislike comes in. If you're understanding that to be, and I don't know which way you go on it, we could talk about it. If you're understanding that to be that he's actually physically there, that he's somehow continued to time travel or continued to parallel universe travel, and he's there holding the umbrella for her, that's a shit ending. In my humble opinion, that's a shit ending. I don't think that's what the ending is. I think the ending is he's with her in her heart, in her spirit, because she was able to process the grief, that thoughts of him are no longer painful, thoughts of him are comforting. And the reason I think that, just other than it makes me angry to think that they would screw the whole thing up by having him actually be there, but in the first scene, and not the first scene, but he goes to the window, he asks for the tickets. The ticket woman says, "I'm sorry, that girl over there has both of them." It's pouring rain out. She's facing away from him. He walks over with the umbrella and holds the umbrella over her and asks her if he can buy the tickets. Or he starts to try to ask, "Hey, you have both those tickets." And she says, "They're not for sale," and she bolts. Because in that moment, the memory of him was not comforting. She was still traumatized by losing her friend, her romantic partner. Crush, whatever you want to call him. So in that moment, she'd run from the comfort because she couldn't face him. It was too painful to face him. And she didn't want to say his name or her say his, like, we don't know this when this happens. But upon looking back, you can kind of put that into context. In the last moment, he puts the umbrella over her and she turns to him and looks at his face. And to me, that signifies growth as the character of going, no, you are no longer this tragic memory. I've come to terms with losing you, and I'm glad you're with me in my heart. But I don't think he's physically there.
Mm-hmm. And if he's physically there, it definitely negates the theme of the movie, where it's like, letting go and like moving on with your life. But my inner girly romance is like, I really wish that they could just have a parallel world where they could be together. So I understand where you're coming from. And yes, I
shit ending.
I don't actually think that's really, like, even in the drama ending, I didn't think that was him. In the movie, I understand why it shouldn't be him. It's just deep down, like, there, I'm just like, I want it to be a happy ending, and I want them to be together because they're so cute together, and the chemistry is so good, and they just make such a cute couple. So, story-wise, I agree with you. Girly romance, underlying stuff is, God, I wish they're together.
No, and I get the wish fulfillment, and honestly, I think there's a whole section of fans that 100% think that he's there and it's a happy ending and like they went through this trial and tribulation and now they get to be together, and that's fine. Like, keep it on the surface. But I think if you're really watching the movie, like, you understand that no, like, she's healed. This is a way of showing her healing. And the subtlety of it, I really appreciate. I really appreciate it being in the rain and the umbrella at the beginning, and the snow and the umbrella at the end. Like, it's a very nice bookend, and it's even shot very similar. And it's just, it felt like a very nice way to end the movie. Like, I see it end like that, and that ending isn't sad to me. That ending is like, no, what they went through was worth it. Like, she really did heal. by going through this ordeal.
And they got to spend a summer together, like actually getting to know each other and not just crushing on each other.
Yeah.
Which they wouldn't have had the opportunity anyway. But if there's even, like, part of me feels like it's not even really a time travel movie where, like, it's just each of them in their own parallel universe healing and, like, thinking of, like, what could have been.
Right.
You know? So it's like they didn't actually time travel. It was just them healing mentally. But we don't have to get into that because I don't want to wreck people. A beautiful movie. God, it was so good. Like, I want to watch it again. And I really am so glad we watched it in the theater. It was, like, beautiful.
I will say, like, one of the other things I really liked that really hit me as a great visual representation of the thematic and, you know, the kind of end when they're in their little pod at the very end, and they kind of they go through a physical re-entry process, like what astronauts deal with when they're re-entering the atmosphere from space, and you see the flames out the window and the whole thing is shaking, and, you know, really signifying this idea that we've been in space together. We've been in this place where neither of us really belong together for a while, and now we have to re-enter into our own lives. And we can't just stay here forever. And I thought that was an interesting visualization of that thematic. Maybe a little over the top, but I really enjoyed it. I really thought, I was like, oh, re-entry. Like, even just like the word that we use for that felt so perfect. And it felt like an ending that was fitting of the emotions that we'd sat through for the, you know, entire film. I don't know if they make films like this very often that have the ability to do the coming of age romance story about kids in love, you know, which can be, I keep using the word surface, but it can be a little superficial. But it felt deeper than that. It felt like there was a bond there, that they really missed each other. But then also the subtlety of the filmmaking and the subtlety of the imagery and the thematics, like everything just kind of worked together, and they didn't really hold your hand very much through it. Like, you had to really watch the movie. And I think so many movies try to beat us over the head with different things and are just, you're so worried that just one idiot in Indiana isn't going to understand this movie, that the rest of us are just have to go, oh, yeah, I get it. She said I love you for the 14th time because in case we missed it the other 13. But this one did not wait for you.
Yeah.
And it made you watch.
Yeah, and essentially what I feel like you're saying is that it was essentially a commercial movie. But it didn't feel like a commercial movie. But also, it didn't have to be an art house movie to pull all those emotions out. And, like, the subtleties and, like, you know, like, we had to see the imagery and pull out these subtle contexts throughout the movie. But a lot of times when I watch, like, art house films, it's so contrived for the sake of being an art house, where I don't really think they know why they're doing what they're doing. And they're just like, oh, this is like an indie film. It has to be a certain way. It has to have a mood. But then, like, those, like, the imagery, the representations, the, you know, like, the metaphors are so convoluted. You know?
It takes subtlety and moves it to obscure. And you're like, wait, what was that reference? What are you trying to connect? How are you trying to connect these dots? I do think you're right, is that it's a weird middle movie where it's too artsy to be considered like a popcorn film.
Yeah.
And it's too popcorn to be considered an art film. But it does hit this sweet spot, for me anyway, that kind of fulfills both sides, where you're like watching something that's entertaining Like, that's my issue with art house films. Sometimes they're so poignant they're not entertaining anymore. Where I'm like, I get that you're making a point. I totally understand you're making a point, but you also have to make me want to watch. And I think this one did a good job of making a point and selling us a story and keeping us entertained. And so that, for me, was why I say it's a sweet spot between those two things.
Yeah. It's a good storytelling. It's just good movie. And the storytelling is like really on point. So I think it's time for our rating. For me, the drama, I'm gonna rate the drama On Board Karaoke, which is, I think, roughly a 7.
I think we'd call that 7 out of 10.
Yeah. Mainly because, again, I told you when I first was watching it, I was very frustrated for a lot of episodes where I'm like, I actually considered not going back and finishing it because I was so frustrated with her character and how selfish she is. And then also there were some annoying characters that I'm like, I just don't really care and I don't want to see these characters. And it goes from like, I feel like Caesar Wu's character was one of the annoying ones for me because he was really rude and annoying to her when she liked him and he was like just treated her like shit. Then when he started having feelings for her, he was so like obnoxious. He just like put a monkey wrench in everything, and I just felt like the existence of his character was just, God, I wish he wasn't there, kind of. And then I think the part where like, you know, the brother was really annoying, and then the part where like the loan sharks or gangsters were after them took way like too long. And I know that's like their main, you know, obstacle, but it was a little taxing, the drama, even though a lot of it worked and I liked it ultimately. And the characters, of course, are the two main leads, and then the two besties are great. But yeah, On Board Karaoke for the drama. And then the movie, I would say Drinks on a Pool Deck, which is like equivalent to a 9 out of 10. So I did enjoy the movie actually more than the drama.
Do you think you enjoyed the movie more just based on the quality of the movie, or did you take what you already kind of learned or appreciated from the drama and then it expanded upon it to kind of elevate the movie too?
I think the latter. I think because when I ended the drama, I liked them so much together that I was definitely like looking forward to the movie. And then when I found out we could watch it, I was like, let's go, because I need to see more of them together. And in my opinion, I thought going into the movie, I thought it was going to be a continuation, like a part 2 of their romance. And so I think but I do think the movie was really well done. I really enjoyed it. But I think definitely my emotions towards the drama carried over into the movie.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I sometimes think people like the sequel to the original movie a little better, even though it may not be as strong, because like, I don't know, the first movie has built up some goodwill or an adaptation. If they don't blow it, you're like, oh, I like this better, because it's like, well, yeah, because you know this rich tapestry of characters, and now we've, you know, expanded upon it. I can't rate the series, obviously, because I didn't see it. I would rate the movie as in the buffet line, which is the equivalent to an 8 out of 10. And I think the only really knock on it was I did find it very jarring that the time travel happened so late. And then also just what we talked about earlier about the characters not earning their stripes. That's a really big deal, especially lately, because it feels like everyone is just kind of skimping on that part of drama, and I don't want to see that disappear from storytelling. So I wish there could have been better ways for those characters to learn such crucial pieces of the pie. But overall, fantastic. 8 out of 10. It's a pretty high rating for me.
It is. It actually really is. So I think this week we're going to recommend a book. It doesn't really have that much of a correlation to the movie or the drama. The title is called Jie by Priest. drama watchers out there might have watched Word of Honor. That is based off of Priest's book, Faraway Wanderers. And actually, Chia is a character that actually shows up in Faraway Wanderers, and she is kind of like a prequel to it, even though it's their story. But it's a reincarnation story. I thought of this book when I was thinking about the movie and the drama, and how, she goes back over and over again, traveling in time to try to change things and fix things. Whereas Chia, he gets reincarnated over and over again. And
that wraps up this episode of the Drama Means podcast. We'll be back next week. We have not decided what we're going to talk about quite yet. We have an extensive list of drama that we watched from 2023 that we still haven't gotten to. So we're going to try to knock one of those out.
Yes, and since I was sick for a month and a half, I watched a lot of stuff. I binged a lot of stuff, so there's a lot on our list that we need to get through. So we might be talking about older things, and we will probably talk about some things that we're currently watching now that's just now airing. So it's going to be kind of this mishmash of
going back and forth.
Yeah. But yes, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.